All right, we'll kick start. I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about how to fix failing ERP projects. That's the topic for today. And now this session is really for all of you. So what I'm expecting is please contribute, ask questions, share your perspectives. That's where we get a lot of value from the session. So this is easy. There is no formality. There is no sort of protocol. It is really, we'll share some information and recording will be available to us. So that means we don't have to take any notes, and we start with introductions. Over to John.
You say John or Sean?
John, sorry.
Oh, yep. Afternoon, everyone. John Rafters, CFO at Pilbara Metamaya and on the Joondalup Council.
Thank you, John. Brian?
Hi guys, my name is Brian Pelser. I'm with Professional Advantage. So we're a Microsoft systems integrator. I've been around the traps with ERP implementations and that sort of thing for about 25 years. So, yeah.
Thank you. Sean?
Greetings, I'm actually in Cairns. I work for a company called the Procurers. We specialise in local government procurement consulting and assistance. Prior to this, I was working at Port Douglas Shire Council, and before that with the US State Department for 14 years. So I'm sort of learning along the way.
Great, we all are, Sean. Kieran?
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Kieran. I'm a project coordinator in the Shire of Cully and recently implemented ERP in another local shire here. And yeah, I've been doing this for quite a while. So yeah, forward interest in upcoming projects that might happen and some past experience.
Great, thank you. And Harley is joining us from Bani. Call me SP, so my full name is Sarahpreet. From Bani Consulting, we partner with medium-sized businesses, helping transform business so we understand where they are right now, where they want to be in future. So we work at technology layer to help improve business capabilities. Now, we all have different experiences and again, as I've said, I'll share my perspective. What I would really value is Sean, Brian, Kieran, John, and new people who will be joining us. Let's jump into it and make a real discussion. We will lose the value if I present my perspective and we leave it there. So it is really important for us to make it a real discussion. So with that in mind, Tony, welcome. We're just starting. I'm sharing my screen and let's jump into it. So I'm sharing three perspectives. There are, imagine three companies which are implementing ERP and they all are stuck, but they are stuck in different ways. The first company name is Rivervale. Consider this as the first example. They are stuck in UAT, what we call as UAT deadlock. So the project was reported green. Project initiation, design, build, everything was just fine. The project status reports has all these smiley faces and green traffic light signals. And when UAT started, that's where things fall apart. The people who were testing the software during UAT, user acceptance testing, they reported that the software is not fit for their needs and it is not the right fit. There are quite a few bugs we don't fully understand. Hence, the project team suggested we need more budget, more resources, and more time. So few change requests were put forward to move on the project. So that is what we call as UAT deadlock, where the symptoms are everything looks fine up till user acceptance testing and things fall apart after UAT. We see this trend very often. The key thing here is that putting more resources during UAT is not necessarily going to resolve the problem. Hold off on that thought and we'll jump on the second example. The company name is PlayPat. I just come up with these names. So PlayPat, they are what we call as a custom build blender. They had a product which is a bespoke application. This is a custom software which they have developed over 30 years. That product is no longer supported. Hence, they look for a very flexible ERP. What happened was they started with customizing the flexible ERP based upon their existing product, since that product worked for PlayPat quite well. And 8 months down the track, they re-estimated the project, and based upon the progress they made in 8 months, the project team told we need 3 times the original budget for just phase one. And that's where things have blown out of proportion. Again, this is a symptom. Even if we put 3x the budget for alone, phase one alone, it's not necessarily going to fix the problem. Holding that thought, let's move to the third example. Jam Gin. This is what we call as siloed fracture. The MD of the company signed ERP project. They said, finance, you can just manage the project. After 2 years, finance was using the software. Rest of the organization was doing things the way they want. So it is siloed, where finance implemented within their divisions. Other were not engaged, consulted, and hence the investment was not worth it. And at some point, things may work, but they feel stuck. Now, these are 3 examples. These are 3 common trends we see. I'll stop there and maybe go around the table and see if anyone has any other examples that they have seen in their career. So please jump in, anyone.
Yeah, Buddy, I'll kick off. I think one of the things that we do see as a Microsoft partner as well, where implementations are run and the implementation is like done on the minimum viable product implementation, and a lot of the functionality that the actual end user or the customers need is really not delivered. And then what we find is, there's quite a few of those calls that we get, in a month, where we've got failed implementations calling us up to step in, have a look, and see how we can rescue this. And I think that's also just a very key one there as well, where not being cognizant or not really appreciating the value or the investment that's required for certain ERP projects, and just going in and doing a minimum viable product implementation. And that again catches up with them in the longer run. So 2 years down the line or a year down the line, the implementation's been done, and 6 months into operating with the system, they're finding that there's just this void. So that's one of the key things that we come across quite often.
That's good point. That's really good point. And I think from a sales perspective as well, MVP is a good starting point, but that's not the end. Thanks for sharing that, Brian. Anyone, any other trends they have seen where we feel stuck?
You mentioned siloing before, and I think the experience we've had with clients recently is around the implementation of a procure-to-pay cycle or system. And I don't think the right stakeholders have actually been engaged, the people who are on the tools, if you like. And so
Yes.
From a management perspective, they say, we're going to implement this, and they don't have the right conversations. And then they provide something that really isn't fit for purpose and doesn't have the support of the staff.
Yes, yeah, and that's very common. So these are like common trends we see. The key thing here is that, there will be, or there are more. This is not exclusive list, but the patterns are set. They are very, very common to see. The key thing here is that putting in more resources does not solve the problem, and that's where we are going to dig deep in this session. So we're going to talk about failing ERP projects. When we say failing ERP project, what does that mean? So this is our definition. It's not industry wide. For our discussion, when we say a failing ERP project, we mean the amount of investment which we are making in the ERP project is much greater than the expected value. The second point is when there are bitter relationships between departments or between vendors and customers or between different teams, those bitter relationships are due to failing ERP project. The third point is dead ends, where we are putting in more effort, more resources, but we don't see recovery. The recovery option is as if it is locked. So these are few signs of failing ERP project uh, for our sort of context. Now, with these 3 points in mind, when we say failing, the definition of failing is it is non-binary. It is not yes or no. It is not a 0 or 1. It is in fact a spectrum. That means we are failing all the time. So any project, there are certainly we are failing on certain things, we are winning on certain things. So we are on spectrum. For any ERP project which is ongoing, the failing part is happening. The key thing here is the decisions that drive it. So the decisions, the quality of decisions is really making a difference between how much we are succeeding and how much we are failing. So the point here is really, it does not matter which ERP project we are working on or we are part on, the failing part is happening, it is ongoing. That's true with anything in life. But especially, so we are focusing on ERP projects, the failure is happening. The key thing here is where we are failing and the decisions which are underlying for our success and failure. Now, what happens is when we are in the journey, failure is invisible. And that's the problem with failing. When we are in an ERP project, what we see is work. We sign off on the invoices. We look at the milestones are ticked and checklists are ticked, and we see a momentum. We see people are busy. That is above the water. So we see a lot of activity. We feel like the progress is being made. But what happens is below the surface, this is the decisions that we took. That is the road we are working on. If the decisions and the road we have chosen are wrong, then all the work is leading to the wrong sort of destination. So in other words, if we have chosen a wrong product, a wrong vendor, or we don't have the right people sitting within our organization to lead the ERP project, those decisions are made. Now, rest is just the work which will lead us to the failure anyway. So I think this is really the key thing where we see all these ERP projects failing. While we are in the project, we are busy doing work. We don't see the failure because it is based upon the decisions that we took. But on the hindsight, everything is very clear. When the project is stuck and 2 years after, then we can look back and then we can see, oh, we have made these bad decisions. We should have decided few things. We sat on those decisions for a long period of time. We took everything like in ad hoc fashion. So there was lack of governance and leadership. So all these things which are on the hindsight, and that's true for many of the things, they are much clearer. But when we are in the game, it's hard to see where we are failing. I'll stop there. Maybe I'll seek your input as well. So does that resonate with rest of the people on the call, or what has your experience on that?
I think one of the underlying issues with all of this and what you've obviously shown us as well is really around it just sort of emphasizes how important that project management role is, and in terms of that from a governance point of view and ensuring that everything's done. I mean, at the end of the day, we look at it from a functional perspective, what's failed, what hasn't worked. But again, digging deeper, it's all about root cause analysis. What has happened? Where's it gone wrong? And this whole thing really starts from the outset in terms of what is the foundation got to be right in terms of requirements, that the requirements are clearly defined, that they're challenged. It's a business project, not an IT project. Business has got to drive it. From a stakeholder engagement, in terms of the buy-in and the support from the ELT, the executive leadership team, it's got to be in play. It's got to be in place. And identifying key people to drive the project, people that actually work on the tools, that are involved on a day-by-day basis. And again, you can't just split their role between doing their daily work and doing the implementation, but rather backfill those roles, invest that money up front, because it's going to come back and bite you if you don't. But I think the cornerstone of this whole thing is really around that project management. You've really got to have that leadership, from both sides. And again, from an implementation partner point of view, if the leadership's not that strong on the other side, it's got to be called out. And conversely, open, transparent communication.
Absolutely. Now, that's a good point, Brian. Any other thoughts, anyone?
I think all of the above are true. I think everyone on the call knows how complex any particular project can be, and you've small implementations, and you've got more challenging ones. But actually, how you set up the program is the fundamental that you can't recover from. If you've got your phases and your scope split in a way that has a fair chance of success, that's a building block. You can think of an implementation where you're trying to replace all systems that have been in place for over a decade or something like that. You're setting yourself up for probably a 2 to 5 year long project initiative rather than an implementation type project. So how you start and those foundations that you put in your project structure, your team, your governance, not just project management but change management. Again, they're all elements that, depending on the complexity and the size of your organization, have to be varied. So the key is often how you start. Good momentum is just a start, but it's a fundamental of success. Yeah, look, I'll just make that point. Your PID, particularly your PID, where you break out your phases, you communicate those phases, you schedule those over on a very high level, and then bring in all those stakeholders into the governance structure. I mean, that's all key to success.
Certainly indeed. So yeah, project management. So we'll cover these aspects a little bit more detail as well. So I fully agree, Kieran. So what we have just established is failure. It's constantly happening. We can not see very clearly while we are in the project. However, we can see on the hindsight. And now we are shifting gears and we're talking about 5 red flags. Now, these are things that if we see in the project or if we see our clients or our teams, this is something we should be very conscious about. The first thing is no news. So if the ERP project is going, there is no news. No news is not a good news. We must intervene and see what's going on. The second thing is governance theater. When steering committee meetings are more of a theater where steering committee members come or board sit, and then the project management team tell the rosy story, the good story. Everyone nods and say, yeah, all the good. There's a lot of activity. It must be all good. That's what I call it, governance theater. Instead, what should happen is that in those meetings, we have a safe environment where the steering committee member comes prepared and they are being held accountable to for their different directorates or different divisions. They come prepared, share their concerns, ask questions. Project management team table the decisions that the steering committee members should be making, and it is all real discussion happening. Instead of everything is fine and we are making progress. So if it is a governance theater, we should be concerned. Third is old foundation. As we shared an example before, if we are building a new product or new implementation based upon our old product, it is a serious sort of concern. Point four is too simple. Sometimes we say, oh, it's a piece of cake. Oh, someone oversimplifies ERP implementation. It could be small implementation. Nothing is too simple when it comes to ERP implementation. They are complex by nature. So if someone is projecting or thinking it's too simple, we should be concerned. And fifth is no accountability. As Brian and Kieran, you mentioned, if there are no accountability set, who owns the project, who owns the project management, who owns change, who owns data, who owns testing, all these elements, accountability must be set at start. As Kieran mentioned, paid project initiation documentation, that is not sort of negotiable, that must happen. So these are 5 red flags we should all be looking for during the ERP implementation. Now, if we say, okay, these are sort of symptoms to look for, but the underlying reasons are these 6. So if we have chosen a wrong product, which is not fit for purpose, that is likely that we are looking at. So these 5 red flags will be quite clear. Similarly, if we have chosen wrong partner, or the business decision is a go live rush, that means by certain date this project must be complete. If there is some arbitrary date that everyone is rushing through, we will be in problem, we will be in trouble. Number 4 is no architecture. If we do not understand how our ERP will sit with other products from a technical side, as well as how from a business side, ERP architecture, ERP interactions will happen with, say, a service portal, website, bespoke applications, Microsoft Suite. So if we don't understand from a business side how the interactions end to end will work, that is going to be a problem too. If we are ignoring basics, that means that project management is basics, change management is basics, data migration is basics, UAT or acceptance testing of any sort is basics. So if we're ignoring basics, that's the problem. And no leadership, that is, we're thinking it's too simple, things are ad hoc, there's no accountability. These are 6 common reasons why we see these 5 red flags. There will be more reasons, but this is something we see very common. Now, if I ask myself and say wrong product, wrong partner, all these 6 points, why they happen? So what is the root of these 6 common reasons? And I feel that is, it all leads to one thing, which is bad decisions. Ultimately, we are making bad decisions when it comes to products, selecting partners, not looking at architecture, accountability, leadership. So all these points which we covered before, it is bad decisions. Now, as an executive, as a business owner, as C-suite executive, I don't want to make bad decisions. So why we see people within decision-making capacity, why these bad decisions are happening, why they're so common? If we reflect on that, I think the answer is very simple, but I think it is not made that sort of visible. So we are all across this 5 stages, which is unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. I'll share a bit of example. I'm sure we have gone through this before. And then we relate that with ERP projects, and we'll share some feedback from the group as well. So I'll go through the stages first and try to relate back to the ERP, and then seek some feedback. So stage 1 is unconscious incompetence. And the example is, I'm a little kid. I feel like driving a car is piece of cake. I can drive. It's just moving the steering. So I don't know what I don't know. That's stage 1. Stage 2 is when I'm little grown up. I know, okay, to drive a car, I need to learn certain things. So I know the gap. That is stage 2, conscious incompetence. Now, stage 3, where I'm actually learning the car. I can drive the car, but I have to be very cautious. I have to be very effortful while I'm driving the car. Everything is a lot of pressure on my brain. Then after a long practice, I can drive a car without any with thinking. So that is unconscious competence. So that happens with everything. I believe when it comes to ERP implementations, the problem we feel is that at an executive level, we are being bitten by stage 1 and stage 2. That means in a decision-making capacity, we feel that, or we are led to believe that ERP projects is, if we sign the project and we get the team, it just should be fine. So the gap is much bigger. It's oversimplified what it takes to roll out or implement ERP. So unconscious incompetence, or what we don't know is what we don't know at an executive decision-making level, is quite big. And the second part is for the conscious incompetence, where we feel like, I don't have a data migration person, I don't have a business analyst to do some analysis. We try to hire those roles, but do not think the big picture, the architecture, the governance. Are we making right decisions or not? Because of stage 1 and stage 2, I believe that's the root cause of why bad decisions are being made, why we don't have project management to start with, why we don't invest on change, why we don't think about architecture, why we randomly select products and partners, why we push for go live, which should be some arbitrary date. And all of these things which we just covered, they are the root causes, the bad decisions, and I believe that come from unconscious incompetence and conscious incompetence at an executive leadership level when it comes to ERP implementations, because many cases they have not been part of this. They don't understand what it takes to implement ERP. That to me is a big problem. Now, just taking one step further, if we consider this, imagine there are 3 different projects. The first is a civil project, second is a manufacturing project, third is ERP implementation, ERP project. Civil project is building some sort of building, manufacturing is some machine, and ERP project we all aware of. If the project size is all same, so all are $500,000, the complexity is relatively similar. For civil and manufacturing, I'm sure if we are investing, we are going to get the right engineers, right technical people. We will get the qualified people who know the trade, who have certifications and experience to run these projects. But when it comes to ERP implementations, we feel like, or we are led to believe that someone within IT who knows software, or someone within finance who knows chart of accounts, they should be able to do it. So I think that's the gap, and that is because of the stage 1 and stage 2, which we just covered. I've got one more thing, but I like to stop here and reflect and seek sort of insights from others who are on the call. So what do you see in market or from your experience?
I see two. SP. I think you've called it out a very good one there, which is there's a misnomer. We call it an ERP project, but in actual fact, it's a business transformation. And the project manager or the person responsible for the program of work is fundamental to the future of the business. So must be empowered to make decisions, and generally they're selected because they have much more specific domain level experience and confidence, and that can cause huge difficulties where, if you like, the people who are closest to the truth and the detail are not empowered to project that knowledge into better decisions. That may be pain, or maybe a long-term approach as opposed to a short-term approach, or whatever the situation might be on the day. But you've called that one out really good. The other thing is on your slide why bad decisions. It sort of synopsizes how, if you're running a program, sometimes the weight is all on you, whereas there are accelerators that can de-risk the whole of that. Selecting the right vendor who has a template that's specific to your industry, your industry need, is a huge accelerator. I'll give you an example. I think I once implemented a system on my own within 10 to 12 weeks for a multinational. Now, how was I able to do that? Was because I was replicating something that already existed, and descoping development so that it could be scheduled in on a kind thing. So, if you have the answer to the homework for your sector, it makes a massive difference to the outcome of the project. So actually looking very closely at reference and templates is probably the biggest positive enabler you're going to put into any project work, because there's very significantly different projects taking a vanilla or an MVP product and then building it on from zero, as opposed to having the advantage of insight from lessons learned.
Absolutely. This is a really good point, Kieran. Thank you. So this is really where we are in sort of selection phase, rather than say what you have and looking at the list. We also look at their templates, their IP, how these accelerators can support the implementation, because if they have done that 20 times before from a vendor side, those accelerators can really make a difference. So yeah, I agree with you. That's a very good point. Anyone else before we close to the next slide? Okay, so let me conclude this and then we'll open for a full discussion. So this is what I call it as a bulletproof checklist. Few of the points we covered already. This is a checklist that tells us where we stand with ERP implementations. This is the questions that we should be asking, like why? Do we know why we are running the ERP implementation? Who have we identified our stakeholders, their role within the project? What have we got the basic project implementation in place, so documentation in place, that is the scope, business case, charter, architecture, which that means which are the different partners who will be part of it. Sorry, someone admitting. And we have we formed the right internal project team? Have we got the engagement from leadership? Have we got a grid plan and reporting and acceptance criteria? I think if we just start with this to say how we are tracking on the project, if we are part of implementation and these basic questions cannot be answered, we have a problem. So with that in mind, and few of the things which we covered already, I will conclude by the final closing thoughts. And these are, doesn't matter which ERP implementation we are part of, failure is happening. We are part of it. And we always should be looking at the red flags, and we must look at the root cause of the problems. Pouring in more budget, more resources, more time is not going to fix the problem. The root cause is what we should be looking at, because if we have chosen the wrong product, or someone who's leading the ERP implementation does not have experience, more money, more resources is not going to fix the problem. So always digging in root cause will save us. With that, we'll conclude and we'll open for a quick discussion. Any other thoughts, scars, or anything else you'd like to share? Please jump in.
Yeah, I think I think we just got to be realistic to the fact that there's a lot more of this happening than we led to believe in terms of failed projects or failed implementations and things that go awry. And sometimes, the impression is there that someone's selected a product or gone down a path, maybe just to have that on their resume, and selection's not done with the right decision. So I think this whole thing, as everyone pointed out, and that Kieran mentioned as well, is really getting those fundamentals. The basics really start with those requirements, ensuring that you've got the right foundation. You know what you can, what the objectives are. Selecting the right partner, industry experience, that becomes so important in order to deliver these projects. It's not just show up and throw up. It just doesn't happen. But the problem is as well, and typically when you look at a project, an investment that goes into a project, I always used to have this little mindset and say, well, when someone's buying a project and spending less than 500,000 on an ERP implementation, it's really based on price. So that's their motivation. When you go up like a 500,000 to a million and a half, it's price and risk. The risk element starts coming into it. But when you get into the bigger projects, risk becomes the major factor, like 80-20 versus the price. But I don't think, it's not like you're going to get a project every day that's 2 million plus or 3 million plus in services. So you're really sort of straddling that $500 to $1.5 million investment that a company is prepared to make. And again, right product for them, make sure they do their due diligence. And I think the onus is also on the SIs. Rather be honest and be upfront. If the scope is not clearly defined, if you're responding to an RFP and something's amiss over there, either qualify out or have the canonis to actually say, guys, there are shortcomings in this, and qualify your response, qualify what what you're going, what your interpretation or definition of the scope is. I think that's really key, and it's also have the courage of your convictions. If you're just being battered down on price, because if we look at any relationship, any ERP implementation, it's a long-term relationship. It's not just getting there, do the implementation, and get out. That's not how it works. That's not how it works in reality. You've got the tailing end of it. You've got the optimization piece that comes afterwards. You've got the support element. You've got all those factors that come in. And it comes down to that core fundamental around trust and transparency and openness. You've got to have that relationship in an ERP project. You've got to call it out, and if the SI or the implementation partner's at fault, they've got to take it on the chin, they've got to manage it, and they've got to rectify it.
Yeah, yeah, certainly, Brian, I agree with everything you said. It is really a joint activity. It is a team activity, and if we are pushing and pulling between vendors and customers or between customers, that doesn't, it's a long-term thing, and that with that in mind, we must work together. Thank you. Anyone else before we close?
I think the one thing that you never see in the books and the information and the slides and everything is actually a decision to go. is actually to review your foundations, and if you're not comfortable, don't start. Because quite often, maybe it's just a view or whatever, you see a project set up to fail. Because the organization is not ready, or maybe the technology isn't ready, or maybe some work hasn't been done, significant work. That has to be built into the project model as actually a go no go decision. Probably before you put out your tenders, because if you're set up to fail, you're fighting from that point onwards, and it's a lonely, difficult journey.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a really good point, Kieran. Thank you. Okay, I think that is great, and Harley will send us a quick review email. So please, I'll appreciate if you can fill that out so we see how we go. And we run this every month, so please join us. And we want to make it as a little community where we can get together, talk about things, collaborate, and make a difference in whatever we are doing. Again, thank you all, and we'll see you all next month.